Hello, I'm Mark Blunden and this is the Standard's Tech and Science Daily podcast. Coming up, snow finally falls on Japan's Mount Fuji after record-breaking warm spell. But first,
I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president.
yes, Donald Trump's been re-elected President of the United States, beating his rival Kamala Harris by some margin. Tech and Science Daily looks at Team Trump's digital communication strategy, big tech backing, and his all-important decision to bet big on podcasts, notably Joe Rogan, and how this compared to the Democratic candidate's media game plan. Mark Borkowski is founder of Borkowski PR, a specialist in crisis and digital communications. He walks us through Trump's media strategy.
I think Trump's strategic embrace of podcasts, I think we will judge it as a masterstroke in connecting particularly with a younger, predominantly male demographic that he needed. And I'm peering on platforms like Joe Rogan and the past weekend with Theo Von, Trump tapped into audiences that traditional media often overlooks. You know, these appearances allowed him to present what Trump is, you know, a more unfiltered persona, you know, and it resonated with the listeners who actually were looking for that Trump authenticity over where the other campaigns were playing with that sort of over-polished rhetoric.
And we asked how this compared with the strategy of Team Harris.
Kamala Harris' strategy was in contrast to that. She leaned heavily on traditional outlets. She looked for high-profile endorsements, in a way, a traditional presidential campaign. I think she lacked a targeted precision of Trump. He's a showman, but actually never underestimate his understanding of the crowd. And I think that came out particularly with Joe Rogan. I mean, there was certain sections in Joe Rogan where he was quite irreverential to Trump and explained to Trump his own popularity, which I thought, listening to the podcast or watching a podcast in that case, that, you know, Trump was sort of surprised by it. But Harris's campaign really underestimated the shifting media consumption habits, particularly amongst the young voters.
There was also the role of social media, notably Elon Musk's X, and we were keen to know about the intersection between social media posting and getting out to vote.
I think we've got to get a balance about this between, you know, social media engagement and actual votes. And I think the correlation probably is tenuous at best. The key factor for me is what Elon Musk has done with X. And I think his financial contributions, certainly, and his donations, Trump campaign, I mean, certainly when that happened, raised eyebrows and questions about the influence of these tech moguls, particularly in politics. But I think he was significant, not only providing a financial boost, but also signaled to his vast following a tactic of endorsement of Trump's candidacy. So I think that was really important.
And with Musk now in Trump's inner circle, all eyes will be on Silicon Valley and any moves towards deregulation.
You can't ignore the fact that the Silicon Valley giants wanted to see Trump in power, you know, particularly for deregulation and less curbs on them. And so effectively, you know how certain messages were turbocharged. If you're inside the camp with, say, X, and it is going to be profound. And you've got to think of places like Rumble and the other channels he's using, you know, because we are reaching an age where people are disengaged with mainstream media. And that is, in my opinion, a massive, massive problem for democracy.
Now, the first snowfall has been recorded on Japan's famous picture postcard Mount Fuji after a record-breaking delay for the first time in 130 years after unseasonably warm weather.
The latest that Mount Fuji has ever had snow is the 26th of October, and that was before this year. And so it should be capped with a beautiful snow cap. Snow should have been falling from when the hiking season ends, from about 2nd of October. The record has been extended by 10 days from the last longest year, and it's the longest that Mount Fuji has ever not had snow on it.
That's Adam Smith, a postdoctoral research associate at the University of Glasgow, who specialises in numerical modelling in the School of Geographical and Earth Sciences.
Normally you would have snow falling on the tops of mountains because air is cooler. And so you have these moist parcels of air that come in, are blocked by the mountain, are forced to rise, and then they cool, and then they snow on the top of the mountain. But obviously the temperatures are so high in October this year and throughout the summer in Japan that the air is not cold enough to condense rainfall into snow, and you've not had that freezing process. And so you just don't have snow falling on the top of the mountain.
The lack of powder falling on the almost 12,400 feet tall peak breaks the previous record when snow did not arrive until October the 16th in 2016. The average October temperature is minus 2 degrees Celsius at the summit, but this year it was 1.6 degrees C, and that's a record high since 1932.
We're now seeing this trend in warming temperatures and extreme weather events. And I think this is a pattern that we've really seen in the last decade. 10 of the highest years on average have come from the last decade. You had the strongest hurricane season this season, the Category 5 hurricanes that have devastated Florida. You now have snowfall coming very late in Japan. And this is really a trend that we're seeing across the world.
Now, a study by Bavaria's Regensburg University suggests being more active in the morning and evening could cut the risk of bowel cancer by 11%. Researchers suggest that highlighting specific times when physical activity is most beneficial could pave the way for targeted cancer prevention strategies. The study used data from the UK Biobank to assess around 86,000 people aged 42 to 79 who had their physical activity tracked by wearing an accelerometer on their wrist. Some 529 cases of bowel cancer occurred over a follow-up period of half a decade, but the team found 2 daily peaks in activity at around 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. was associated with reduced colorectal cancer risk beyond the benefits of overall physical activity. Let's go to the ads. Coming up, why wooden satellites being sent into space, plus an emperor penguin pops up in Australia, over 2,000 miles from home. If you're new here, make sure to give us a follow and a rating. Welcome back. In a wonderful fusion of high and low tech, the world's first wooden satellite has been blasted into space. It's part of a project that aims to analyse the role that timber can play to reduce space junk. This is because scientists at Japan's Kyoto University expect the wooden elements of the satellite to easily burn up when re-entering the Earth's atmosphere rather than creating more hazardous metal particles. The experimental satellite device, called LignoSat, is just 4 inches square and is first bound for the ISS before being sent deeper into space to test its robustness. And finally, an emperor penguin has popped up on an Australian beach over 2,000 miles from its home in the Antarctic. Surfers in Ocean Beach, about 270 miles south of Perth, were stunned to see the bird waddling over the sand. Penguin's odyssey from the frozen Antarctic to the considerably warmer Australian climate marks a record swim for the species, as it's the furthest north an emperor penguin has been spotted in the wild. It appeared malnourished and is now being looked after by wildlife experts before release. You're up to date. Come back at 4 p.m. for the latest US election news from the Standard Podcast, and we're back tomorrow at 1 p.m. See you then.